Hello, everybody. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 FedEx St. Jude Classic DFS Tactics Show. We have a lot to get into. We're going to try to find the optimal lineups for this week's FedEx St. Jude. So we have everything you need to try to create that optimal lineup, weather forecast, ownership projections, all of the good stuff here for Calls. I don't want to waste any time. We have a lot to get into, and I want to try and formulate as many lineups as I can. So, all statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much better golf DFS player. Go check out fantasynational.com. You will not regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my Twitter, Instagram, and Kick are in the description. Twitter and Instagram is where I post research weekly for the PGA Tour, and I did so this past Monday for the FedEx St. Jude Classic. So if you'd like to see a summary of the research that I find for the PGA Tour or on the PGA Tour, then give me a follow at your preferred social media site, Twitter or Instagram. Twitter is also where I place my betting cards every week for the PGA Tour. That'll be no different. My betting card for the FedEx St. Jude will come out after the DFS Tactics show tonight. So if you want to see the weekly wagers that I make on the PGA Tour, then give me a follow over at Twitter. And Twitter is also where I post my baseball content that will be picking up again about early September. So if you want to see some quick hitting baseball content, give me a follow over at Twitter as well. Lastly, for my social media, Kick. I am going to be streaming to Kick starting Friday evening and probably moving forward. Friday night chill stream is going to happen, so looking forward to that. We might do some showdown and weekend golf lineups on Friday evening, but been pretty busy, so I'm going to be looking forward to just relaxing, hanging out with you all on a Friday night. Definitely going to be playing some games that I've wanted to pick up on stream. So if you are available Friday evening, then think about joining me at the usual time, 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight, and hang out with me for a little while on Friday night as we just relax, listen to music, and watch me probably get myself kicked in some gaming. So it's going to be a good time, hopefully, to see you Friday night. And then lastly, for social media in general, Gabe's Twitter is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. Highly suggest that you go give him a follow and subscribe to that article. It is free. It's a very good way to start your preparation for the week at hand on the PGA Tour. I do not believe he will be doing his chats during the playoffs. At least that is the last that I have heard from Gabe. I'm hoping he will be able to jump into chat tonight and confirm that. But on other weeks on the PGA Tour, if you are a subscriber to his Substack article, you'll be able to join us in his chat to continue the DFS talk after calls. So go show Gabe some support and follow him over on Twitter and subscribe to that article. Again, it is free. It is a very good read. And then lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all. What questions do you have for the FedEx St. Jude Classic? Who are you pivoting to? Who are you fading away from? Any kind of lineup question, player A versus player B, game theory, lineup shells, all of that stuff. I'm going to try to have a little bit of extra emphasis on tiers tonight, as Gabe has let me know that he is planning on doing some expanded tiers contests this week, which reminds me that I did not give him credit that he won a tiers contest last week for the Wyndham. So we're going to try and expand our tiers content just a little bit, and him and I are going to work together, I think, a lot in the fall in investigating a lot more into the tiers. But want to hear from you all. Who's your winner for the St. Jude? Who inside or outside the top 50 plays their way in? Who plays their way out? I want to hear everything you think for the FedEx St. Jude. So let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2023 FedEx St. Jude Classic. And we're going to start, as we always do, on a Wednesday evening with the updated forecast. And don't mind me as I need to clean off these glasses very, very quickly. The forecast has changed, especially if you were able, or if you were here live Monday evening, or if you were able to follow the forecast Monday and into Tuesday. The winds have really, really died down for tomorrow and Friday. Looks like the winds that were projected for Thursday or forecast for Thursday came in today, and looking like probably sometime during the evening, late tonight or early into the morning Thursday. But looks like no wind, maybe a little bit of rain, a little passing shower or whatnot, but no wind in the forecast. It looks pleasant, looks beautiful. High of 81. Again, very, very little wind to speak of tomorrow. Does look like it could pick up Friday morning. But with this being a no-cut event, I do not see a wave advantage at all, especially since every single one of these 70 players, barring withdrawal, are going to play all four rounds. So I'm not going to focus on any kind of wave advantage or anything like that. Now, Saturday looks like the wind could perhaps pick up a little bit, but it's hard to tell because we don't have the super forecast for Saturday available to us. At least gusty, perhaps. Maybe not sustained winds until late in the day, but perhaps gusty. But looking like it's going to be hot over the weekend. Looks like the best weather is going to be tomorrow, and then moving into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday looks to be hot. And I'll refresh just to make sure. But there's an updated look at your forecast for Memphis and TPC Southwind for this weekend. I will keep that open just in case, but let's move on over to Fantasy National. And not a lot in terms of filters that we looked at this week. I was not comfortable looking at a scoring filter. Generally speaking, I would say this play is more difficult than easy. But most of the rounds, especially when TPC Southwind hosted the WGC St. Jude, it played to average. So I did not feel comfortable looking at much of a scoring filter. This is the course is 7,243 yards in length, so nothing with course length, at least, that I feel comfortable with. If the winds do pick up, I suppose we could look at moderate and windy conditions. It did look like the wind could pick up on Saturday. So let me expand the time frame here and go to all the way to the beginning of 2022. But in the past 18 to 19 months, going back to the start of 2022, our top performers in the wind in the field this week: Sung Jae, Tony Finau, Scotty Scheffler, John Rahm, Keegan, Rory, Xander Schauffele, Matt Fitzpatrick, Max Homa, and Chris Kirk. We'll scroll on down to about the top 25 there or so to round out the top 15. Sam Burns, Jordan Spieth, Cam Young, Tom Hoagie, Sahith Tagawa. They're your top 15 in terms of wind. And then the bottom part, or the players who have not played well in the wind: Harris English, Vincent Norman, only 4 rounds. Lucas Glover, Sam Stevens, Ricky Fowler, Hayden Buckley, Ben On, Taylor Moore, Adams Vincent, Adam Schenk, and on down the list there. But again, I don't have a whole lot of emphasis in wind this week. No favorable draw, especially since all 70 players are going to play all 4 rounds, barring a withdrawal. So not a whole lot in terms of filters. And while we can look at no-cut events, the last no-cut event happened way back in 2021, the calendar year 2021. That's a pretty long time ago, so I don't feel comfortable looking at or putting a lot of emphasis into that. So instead, let's just go ahead and jump straight to the mixed condition model and go through what I see the FedEx St. Jude and TPC Southwind playing like this week. Good evening, P. Thanks for jumping in chat. Good to see you. Hopefully we are ready for the FedEx St. Jude. It is currently raining here in my neck of the woods, so as you well know, life in the Midwest, it seems like you have rain or threat of rain every day in the summer. But good to see you this evening, and then hopefully I'll be able to see you again Friday evening for the Friday Night Chill stream as I debut Kick. But coming to this mixed condition model, this is where I'm going to have a little bit of an open conversation with you, the viewer. Admittedly, these premier events, these smaller field events, are not my specialty. I've not had a lot of success with these types of events. And with that, and knowing that, I wanted to try and find as many different possible angles that I could to attack this week, hoping to catch lightning in a bottle, per se. I am pretty confident in TPC Southwind that there will be 2 to 3 factors that are going to be very, very important to who determines or who plays well this week. And those make up quite a bit of the mixed condition model. But I have numerous, and I mean numerous, metrics and filters that are at 5%. I didn't want to put a whole lot of emphasis into it either because of the metric or the filter used on said metric. But it will appear that my mixed condition model is all over the place. And a little bit, that is true a little bit. But like I said, I wanted to have that open conversation with you. This is me acknowledging that small fields aren't my specialty. I haven't been great at them. So I'm looking at a couple of different things here, hopefully that will add to some success or contribute to more success than what I've had. Starting this mixed condition model, look, I've spent most of the week talking about this being a ball striking course, and I've read a couple of articles since Monday evening that really back that up in the sense that these greens aren't too terribly difficult to putt. This is not a Don Ross design, so there's not a lot of slope, not a lot of undulation. These greens are just small. That is their defense, with a little bit of water around the course. But these greens aren't overly tough to putt once you're on the green. But to be able to get to these easy greens, you got to be able to hit lots of good iron shots. So 20% in strokes gained approach in the last 24 rounds, as long as it's no further back than the beginning of this calendar year. This is just a ball striking course. I really want to focus on the players who are very, very accurate, especially since the weather in Memphis, it has been raining off and on throughout the week. So I imagine the course is fairly soft, and there's still rain in the forecast periodically throughout the event. So I imagine the course will probably stay pretty soft as long as the forecast holds true. And with this being in the Midwest, you can never count on that. But even so, I'm just focused on the ball strikers, particularly the iron players with these very small greens. Really, really want to focus on those types of players. Good evening, Stephen. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully we're ready for the FedEx St. Jude. Hopefully you had a good Wyndham. Did not see you last week. And we are ready to start the playoffs with some momentum. And hopefully we're going to end the PGA Tour season strong. Good to see you in chat. 5% in putting on fast Bermuda greens. I only kept it at 5%. Again, reading a couple of these articles that were mentioning that the putting is not all that difficult here at TPC Southwind. The putting numbers on the prior leaderboards weren't all that high. So I do think it'll be a small factor. I want to give a slight favor to the players who putt fast Bermuda particularly well, but I didn't want to make it a big emphasis in the mixed condition model. I'm going to skip quite a few of the metrics here that you see 5%. As I mentioned, I'm pretty confident that TPC Southwind will play to 2 or 3 different types of metrics that are going to make up the majority of my mixed condition model. So one of them clearly strokes gain approach, and it's the most important in my mixed condition model, 20%. 10% in greens, and I used the filter fairways difficult to hit. And the reason being is that while the course is maybe a little bit soft, generally speaking, these fairways have been pretty difficult to hit. These fairways are narrow. And with the greens being small, if the fairways, or if a player's not in the fairway, I still want to see who's adept at hitting the green when they're in the rough. And that's why I use the fairways difficult to hit filter for greens and for good drives, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But 10% in greens, fairways difficult to hit. 15% in total procs. This is one of the other, 2 to 3 big main statistics in the mixed condition model. I was a little surprised, especially Sunday evening and then moving into Monday, how much total procs appeared to be a big factor because these greens are small. But it was undeniable when we went through the prior leaderboards last night that total procs led to a whole lot of success. So 15% in total procs, and again, that's just adding to the emphasis on these accurate players. 20% approach, 15% in total procs, and the other big portion of the mixed condition model, 15% in total par 4s, as it has been a leading factor at or determining who is successful at TPC Southwind in the past as well. So those are the 3 big metrics, and then the fourth is greens at 10%. But a lot of I can't call them tangent statistic or metrics and filters, but other metrics that I can see TPC Southwind enhancing due to either the format or the quality of players that are here this week. I talked how I wasn't terribly comfortable with the scoring filter, especially the average scoring to par filter, and we spent a decent amount of time Monday night talking how birdies gained versus bogeys avoided were pretty darn even. So when that happens, I like to look at opportunities, but I did not use a filter on opportunities. I just kept it at the beginning of this calendar year within the past 36 rounds, just to see who's been giving themselves the most opportunities, and especially if the course is soft because of the off and on rain that's been in Memphis this week. That means that players that are firing at the flags are generally going to be rewarded. So I want to see players who have been good this season and good this lately on opportunities. 5% birdies gained, so I did go and I leaned towards the birdies gained, and a very, very different filter than what I normally use. I put par 70s as the filter on birdies gained, and let me tell you why. With only 2 par 5s at TPC Southwind, I wanted to see players who traditionally can make who gain birdies without having to take advantage of par 5s. Since there's only 2 of them, like last week at the Wyndham, players are going to have to make their birdies on a lot of par 3s and a lot of the par 4s, and that's why the emphasis on par 4s especially. So it's a very, very odd filter. I don't know if I've ever used this filter, especially with this metric. I don't know if I've used this filter really ever. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense in terms of I want to see who really, really takes advantage of courses or who can go low when they don't have a lot of par 5s to do so. So only 5% because of the pretty unique filter there. But I did lean towards birdies gained because every one of these players is going to play all 4 days. So the winning score should probably get to about 16, 15 in that area. So there will be birdies to be had. 5% in good drives. I talked about the fairways difficult to hit filter when we talked about greens. Same kind of deal here. I want to see, one, if players can just hit the fairway in general when a fairway is difficult to hit, and if not, are they still good enough to hit the green when they're not in the fairway? So quite a bit of emphasis here on some more accuracy, split up 10% in greens, 5% in good drives gained. Now, greens is a portion of good drives gained. I just want to emphasize the greens. I still feel like fairways are going to have a little bit of a factor, so I wanted to emphasize those players or give them a little bit of a boost in my rankings, but more so into the greens. 5% in proximity, 150 to 175. This is the most prominent length, and at least last year and in a couple of the WGC years here at TPC Southwind, it was also the most important. So 5% in that proximity. So a little bit of emphasis in procs this week. 5% in par threes. I really wanted to put 10%, but I also had a bajillion metrics that I've put into this mixed condition model, so I just ran out of percent. If anything, this needs to go to 10%, but I've got it at 5. 5% in the particular length of par fours that are most prevalent at TPC Southwind. 450 to 500. Half of the par fours on the scorecard measure to here. And then 5% in par fives. I don't want to ignore them. They're still going to get played. There's only 2 of them, so not a lot of emphasis this week. There's a look at the mixed condition model. And hopefully now seeing the metrics and some of the filters that I used explains why I was giving you that caveat or having that open conversation and giving you an idea where I was or what I was thinking about, knowing I haven't had a lot of success at these smaller field events. I do have my emphasis on what I think is going to play the most important here, but if you want to say throwing darts, that's acceptable, but trying to pick a little piece here and a little piece there and piecing this together with all these 5% metrics and filters. Some things that I could be weak. These greens are small, so you can easily see around the green being a factor this week. I did not have any part of that in my mixed condition model, so if around the green does become an integral part of the tournament, I'm going to be weak to that. That's why I've put so much emphasis in the accuracy, hoping to find the players that won't have to rely on their around the green game, but it could be incorrect. Of course, anything with these seemingly odd filters, if the par 70 filter for birdies gained is just incorrect, if the fairways difficult to hit filter is incorrect, I'll be weak to that. And if off the tee matters, which I really don't think it is. I think it's more so the fairways portion only. But if off the tee matters, I'll be weak to that. So there's a look at the mixed condition model. Let's go ahead and move on over to Microsoft Excel, the reveal of my rankings for the week, as soon as I figure out where my life is. All right, the reveal of my top 10 for the FedEx St. Jude Classic this week. My number 1 player is Scotty Scheffler. Xander, second. Patrick Cantley, third. John Rahm and Russell Henley round out my top 5. Rory, Ricky Fowler, Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland, and Corey Connors round out my top 10. A quick reminder to those who are returning viewers, or a quick explanation to those of you who may be new. FNGC rank is just an analytical ranking based on just the mixed condition model generated by Fantasy National. Course value, this is generally an attempt at producing a value for a player, how they have played that particular course in the past. This here is only when the WGC St. Jude was happening. So 2019, 2020, and 2021. I did not include last year's FedEx Cup playoff event because it was a 125-man field. I felt more comfortable using the WGCs, they are typically about the same strength of quality of field and right at the same number of players, anywhere between 65 and 75. So that's why I'm using the WGC history, not including last year's FedEx Cup playoffs, and it has very little significance in terms of its weight contributing to the overall, which means I've put a lot of emphasis in percent owned. We are trying to find unique players with a very small field. Every bit of uniqueness is going to matter even more so. So that I always factor in percent owned into my rankings as well. No real surprise here in my top 10, especially since the course value is so low in the overall, or in its weight contributing to the overall. I'm a little surprised Brian Harman is so far down considering the form that he is in. But that just tells you Scotty Scheffler, I mean, yes, he hasn't been making many putts, but tee to green has been a historic season for Scotty. Xander, even though he doesn't have a win, he's been playing very, very well. Cantley, Rahm, no explanation. And, of course, Henley coming off of very good Wyndham. You can always argue the ordering. And I knew Corey Connors was going to rise significantly considering the emphasis I have on accuracy in my mixed condition model. He's 16th in approach, 12th in proximity, 8th in greens. He's also top 15 in good drives gained. He generally hits fairways. So I knew he was going to rise. He might be a bit of a shock, I suppose. But enough of that. Let's walk through this price board, see where the chalk is, and see where we can find some uniqueness and gain some leverage on our fellow contestants. In the 5 digits, in the 10Ks, we have 5 players. Scotty Scheffler at 12-1, Rory at 11-5, Rahm at 11-1, Victor at 10-2, and Xander 10,000 even. None of these 5 players are outside my top 10. If there's a player that I would be most concerned about, it would be Victor. And not just because of the course value, although he has shown, at least in the WGCs, that he has not played TPC Southwind well. And I'm going to have to cheat. The vision will be skewed. But let me go to his player page, see what he did in last year's St. Jude, because I do not remember off the top of my head. It was 20th. He was top 20. But the same thing applies to Victor. If he has to rely on his around the green game, it could be an issue. It's improved, but it could be an issue. And you see, he's generally been a decent putter, except on Bermuda. He's actually been negative on Bermuda. So that does give me some cause for concern regarding Victor. I believe he would be the 5th of these 5 for me. If Xander's indeed the most unique in here, I really like Xander. Top 10 in irons. I'm not afraid of the proximity. One of the top par 4 players consistently on tour. 2nd in greens, especially when fairways are difficult to hit. He's also not been terrible on Bermuda greens. He's not stellar. But after this 35th, you've got a lot of really, really elite statistics. 8th, 6th, 11th. That's Cantley. So 4th, 9th, 2nd, 9th, 2nd. Lots of elite statistics here for Xander. And he's shown that he's played Southwind well in the past in premier events. So if he is indeed the most unique option and the cheapest, I really like Xander. Scotty Scheffler is so very expensive, but you're going to be ignoring him at your own risk. I do think I have a few 6K plays that will be able to fit Scotty Scheffler in some lineups, but his price is pretty prohibitive. Rory, kind of interesting. top 20 in irons. Everything else has been pretty darn good, but the putter, you can say that about a few players. Look, good drives gained. He hasn't been hitting a lot of fairways and or greens when fairways have been difficult to hit, and his proximity from 150 to 175, for what it's worth, has not been good. So perhaps you could give a little bit of cause for concern there as well. But I think Rory's going to be fine. I would put Rory ahead of Victor. In the 10Ks, I'm only going by what I see here in these projected ownerships per Fantasy National. I'll make Xander my number one 10K play if he truly is indeed the most unique 10K play. A lot of it being that he's just the cheapest and he allows a lot of lineup flexibility. I will make Jon Rahm second, I think. Yeah, I'll make Jon Rahm second. He does not have anything bad in here. Not even a darker shade of green. Everything is good to great to elite. 21st is his worst statistic. He is the most projected owned player per Fantasy National. But, I mean, everything lines up very well for Jon Rahm. He's also played this event very well when it was a WGC. I'll make Rahm second in the 10Ks. I'll go Scheffler third, only really because his price is so prohibitive. Rory fourth and Victor fifth in the 10Ks. Moving to the 9s, Patrick Cantlay, Tyrrell Hatton, Ricky Fowler, Jordan Spieth, Tommy Fleetwood, and Colin Morikawa. Again, Morikawa rising with the emphasis on accuracy, approach, proximity, greens and fairways, or good drives gained. Look, it's pretty simple. He's the second to worst putter on fast Bermuda greens. He's also been very, very bad relative to the other players in this field at these 450 to 500 yard par fours this calendar year. So that would be a little bit more cause for concern as well. He's going to be popular because of the talk of all the accuracy and how TPC Southwind is generally pretty difficult. It's very narrow, or at least the fairways are narrow. He's going to be popular. I can't say it's a fade because I do like Morikawa this week, but that's a lot of ownership. I think there are other places you can go in the 9Ks. Let's talk about Jordan Spieth. I know it hasn't been great recently, but he has averaged a top 15 is 2 or maybe even 3 times. He's been at the WGC St. Jude, top 20 still in irons. If around the green becomes a bigger factor, which isn't a factor at all in my mixed condition model, if it becomes a factor this week, his around the green game is one of the world's best. I would not worry about his Bermuda putting all that much. I think he's a better putter than that's showing. He takes advantage of these par 5s, which you have to do. I like Jordan Spieth, and seeing him at 9.7% is awfully appealing to me. Cantlay at 9,800 seems like seemingly like a price discount. I would have thought he would have been in the 10Ks. Granted, 9,800, it's almost there, but I still think Cantlay should be pretty good this week. One of the best at par 4s. He's always a contender at these WGCs. For as much as he's known for his bent grass putting, he's just a good putter in general. We'll bring up Cantlay's page. Again, bent is his preferred surface, but I mean, he's still good on Bermuda. He's generally good. Well, it's just off your screen. Easy is his best, but he's also really darn good when it's difficult as well. So the form isn't fantastic. 33rd at the Open. You missed the cut at the Genesis, but 4th at the Travelers. The irons were really, really good there. PGA, they were really, really good. I don't see a reason why Patrick Cantlay won't be a factor come Sunday. So I like Patrick Cantlay quite a bit. Tyrrell Hatton's going to be pretty darn popular, I would think. I think this is a little underestimating Tyrrell Hatton at 15.7. I see him more in the 18 to 20. I really like him this week, but it might be a fade on that ownership. Number one player in par fours, though. He's also very good on fast Bermuda greens. It's really tough to fade Tyrrell Hatton this week. I like him a lot, but trying to find your uniqueness is going to be a challenge. And if you can do it in the 9Ks, in the 10Ks, I think that's where you need to go. So I'm pretty high on Spieth. I think Fleetwood's fine. Again, going to be very, very popular, just like Tyrrell Hatton. Ricky's going to be good. If I'm going chalk in the 9Ks, I'll probably go to Ricky. I don't see Ricky's ownership going much higher than this. I could be wrong, but I would think Tyrrell Hatton and Tommy Fleetwood will be as popular, if not a little bit more, than Ricky Fowler. So I'd probably go Ricky if I'm going chalk in the 9Ks. But again, if you have a different take, then especially on the ownership, you might see it a little different. But I like Ricky. I mean, all three of these guys should play pretty darn well. If I had to pick one in terms of just raw leaderboard finish, who finishes the best, I'd probably say Tyrrell Hatton, but it's pretty darn close between all three. So that's why I really like Jordan Spieth, trying to gain a lot of that uniqueness, gain some leverage on my fellow contestants and whatnot. So let's look at the 9s. We'll move to the 8s. Not a lot in here that I like, which tells you the kind of lineups I've been building. I talked all week, I mentioned, especially Monday, when AJ asked about his one and done. I do not want to ignore Sam Burns. He generally doesn't rate out well for me anyway. He's like these players, Cameron Champ and Brooks. They don't generally rate out well for me. The irons have been okay the past 24 rounds. It's all about the putter. This is Bermuda. All of Sam Burns' wins have been on some kind of Bermuda, except for the match play. His 2 Valspar wins, his Sanderson Farms win. These are all fast and lightning Bermuda greens. So it's all about the putter for him. If he keeps it on the course, he's going to be a factor. I do like Sam Burns, and you see a lot of the members of Fantasy National like him too. Brian Harman, I love this week. Love Brian Harman. I know it might not seem like it, being 21st out of 70, but the current form, I can't believe he's only at 10.2%. But if he is indeed only at 10%, I'm going to be extremely overweight on Brian Harman. The irons, proximity, par 4s could be a little better, I suppose. Par 3s, which I think probably need to be at 10%. He's 7th, so I like that. He's not been good, kind of like Rory in the specific prox length. But I'm going to be overweight on Brian Harman, especially if he is this low ownership. For as much as I usually talk up Max Homa, I'm kind of down on Homa this week. I don't know why. His irons haven't been great lately. Probably that's the main reason why, I suppose. It's just kind of a gut feeling. I'm just kind of down on Homa this week. Par 4s haven't been good, which you need to be good here at TBC Southwind. And he hasn't played. He didn't play the WGCs here particularly well. Finau, okay, very unique, which seems odd, but his irons have been struggling a little bit as well, kind of like Max Homa in that regard. He's very adept at hitting greens from the rough, at least from the metrics here, 4th in that regard. But just like Morikawa, a few of these other players, it'll come down to the putting. And Finau's generally not good on Bermuda. I mean, he's not a great putter anyway. He's much better on POA, but it's not good on Bermuda. I do think he has the capability to go low, more so than some of these other players on these par 70s. So Finau's interesting, not in love with it. Wyndham Clark, most obvious 8K play, or at least the most projected owned per Fantasy National. I like it, but I like the player. I don't like the ownership. So I haven't been coming into the 8Ks much at all. I'll probably use a Finau or two. I don't have a good gauge on Fitzpatrick this week. Like I said, as much as I generally talk up Homa, I'm pretty down on Homa. Not there on Day. I really like Brian Harman. If I'm coming into the 8Ks, I'm using a lot of Brian Harman. Sam Burns, I'm surprised he's this widely owned. At this ownership, I think I would choose to have my exposure be an outright on Burns as opposed to DFS at this ownership. And Sung Jae, he's burned me enough that I'm gun shy on Sung Jae. He's going to turn it around eventually. I don't know if Southwind's going to be the place because he didn't play the WGCs particularly well here. Moving into the upper sevens. Love both of these players, Russell Henley and Tom Kim. They're going to be popular. That's another reason why I've been trying to find as much uniqueness as possible above them in the price board, particularly in the 9s and 10s, because I knew I was going to use Russell Henley. Tom Kim seems like he's garnering some attention as well. Love both of these plays this week. Henley's in such amazing form. Tom Kim I wasn't truly ecstatic about until I really started looking at it. Top 15 in irons and top 10 in proximity. I guess it was the thought process of the putter that concerned me, but fourth in birdies when you don't have a lot of par fives, fourth in good drives gained when fairways are difficult to hit. There's a lot going for Tom Kim this week. Let's see. None of these other players generally, like Tagala, just like, where'd he go? Just like Sam Burns, generally doesn't rate out well for me. These two players generally don't rate out well. This does not feel like a good Sahith Tagala course. I'll be wrong, but this just doesn't feel like a good Tagala course. As improved as McCarthy has been, he rated out pretty poorly for me as well. He is the number one putter in this field, 8th in par 4s, which is a very good start. But the irons haven't been the best. They're improving, but they still haven't been the best, especially compared against the other elite players in this field. Not particularly adept at hitting greens. And he's also more of a grinder like Sung Jae, like Tyrrell Hatton. He's more of a bogey avoider as opposed to birdies gained. If you think around the green and scrambling is going to play more of a factor than what I've attributed to it, then increase your feeling, increase your ranking on Denny McCarthy. Don't have a great feeling on it. Connors was always going to rate out well with the emphasis on accuracy. I don't feel great about it, but I'm sure I'll have him just because he rates out so well. I much more want to look at Keegan on Bent than on Bermuda. So I'm off of Keegan. So really it's these two. Sepp Straka could be interesting, I suppose. But I really like Russell Henley and Tom Kim in the upper sevens. Moving into the low sevens, Lucas Glover, of course, in great form, coming off the win. Top 5, top 3 in irons and in proximity. Look, putting on fast Bermuda, supposedly his downfall. It wasn't last week at the Wyndham. You can't expect him to go back-to-back great weeks on the greens. He also had the equipment change and went with the broomstick putter, which is the new craze on the PGA Tour. So I think Glover's going to be fine, but also understand he's going to be pretty darn popular as well. Rose rates out really well for me. I don't feel as strongly for Rose as the metrics do. He is top 11 in irons, 6th in proximity, but I've got some concerns on Justin Rose, particularly when he's not in the fairway. So I'm just not there with Justin Rose. I really like Grillo. This is kind of like a Wyndham Clark from above. Love the player this week. I do not like this ownership at 13% in the low sevens. Not crazy about it. Aaron Rai, always going to be rising in rankings when you're talking about accuracy. 10th in irons, 14th in greens, 5th in good drives. I mean, that's what he is. He's a fairway finder. He's the accuracy type player. But very, very poor at par threes, and I think they have some extra emphasis than what I've probably given them. So again, another player that I'm kind of down on. I've got a win ticket on Cam Davis, spoiler for my betting card when it comes out later tonight on Fantasy National. I've got a win ticket on Cam Davis, but it almost feels more FOMO than anything positive for Cam Davis. Because I generally targeted him on Bent, not Bermuda. But he played well at the Wyndham last week. So again, another range that I'm not particularly crazy about. You know, I'll probably use a Grillo some, but that's a lot of ownership. I don't feel great about Justin Rose. JT Poston generally plays easier events, easier courses well. This doesn't feel great for Poston. Rye, I imagine he'll probably be pretty popular. Take a look at Harris English. I know he's really, really low in my rankings, but I don't know. I feel like Harris English is coming back to form, and you see he's garnering some attention. I kind of like Harris English in the low sevens. And then finally, moving into the sixes, I do want to mention a couple players, or 3 or 4 in here. Eric Cole rated out well. He's been pretty solid all year long. I don't see that changing this week. Again, 6K players are always going to have their warts, but top 20 in irons, top half of the field in proximity. He's also been pretty darn good with opportunities. So if his putter stays, neutral or where it's been, which is decent, I think Eric Cole could have a pretty good week. Thomas Detry, talking about putting, really, really likes Bermuda greens. He doesn't have a lot of else going for him, but if you're talking about putting, take a look at Detry. I also kind of like Brendan Todd for that same reason. The irons haven't been good, but I mean he's played well this calendar year. So I don't hate Brendan Todd. Alex Smalley is a lot like Corey Connors and Colin Morikawa in the sense that these players were going to rise significantly with the emphasis on accuracy that I have. But you see, even in this loaded field, Alex Smalley's been the second best with his irons in the past 24 rounds, top 5 in proximity the past 36 rounds. Like a lot of other players, it comes down to the putter, which really let him down last week at the Wyndham. It's also very high in opportunities, but he's not going to be unique. That's the issue with Smalley. I think he's going to be pretty good this week, but he's not going to be unique. Moving lower, I do want to give you 2 to 3 names. A lot of our fellow contestants, or at least members of Fantasy National, are gravitating to Putnam. And even Gabe had Andrew Putnam as his top 6K play when he generated his rankings. That's where I'll be different this week. I'll go against the grain with a lot of others. I understand the reasoning behind it. Very good putter, very good short game. Off the tee probably doesn't matter, which is generally his weakest. But I'm still not there. His proximity hasn't been good. He's been bad at these par 4s, which you have to be good at. And for as good of a putter as he is, he hasn't been giving himself many opportunities to let that putter shine. Where he generally excels too is on par 5s. You only have 2 of them here. I'm just not there with Andrew Putnam. Instead, in the lower 6s, I know he's not lower 6s, but Hubbard Take a look at Mark Hubbard. I wouldn't go crazy with it, but it's all about the irons, the accuracy. I don't hate it. Shank. Adam Shank's been pretty good. Top 13 in irons. He's also a very good putter, especially on fast Bermuda, 8th. So I like that combination there for Adam Shank. And if you're really wanting to go get frisky, and I don't think I would do it often at all, but if you're really trying to get Scotty Scheffler in the lineup without going all in the low 7s after him, at 6,000, I don't hate Sam Ryder. 22nd in irons, also decent with the putter on fast Bermuda. He gives himself quite a few opportunities as well. At 6,000, again, famous last words here, but at 6,000, I think you could do worse than Sam Ryder. So if I've been doing Scotty Scheffler lineups, I've been coming down to Sam Ryder to maybe try to squeeze in another 10 or at least a 9 with Scotty Scheffler instead of having to go Scheffler all the way into the 7s seemingly. Try to drink some water and it goes down the wrong pipe. That'll be edited out of YouTube. As I mentioned, we're going to try to expand our tiers content a little bit, especially with Gabe letting me know that he's going to really be focusing on tiers for a couple weeks to see how it plays and whatnot. And I think him and I are going to be doing a lot of analysis into tiers over the fall and into the off season. In a tiers contest, tier 1 for the St. Jude, you have Scotty Scheffler, Rory, and Jon Rahm. Rory is the most unique option of these three, seemingly, at least in classic lineups. It's so hard to go against Scotty Scheffler, but I imagine he's going to be the most popular tier 1 play. But give me Scotty Scheffler in tier 1. I mean, really, I like all three of these players, but give me Scheffler. Then I'll go Rory if he is the unique of the three. Because I'd rather go Scheffler than Jon Rahm in tier 1. And then we'll go Rory second in tier 1 based on the uniqueness. But give me Scheffler in tier 1. Tier 2. Sorry, that was the ice. Tier 2. Victor, Xander, Patrick Cantlay, Tyrrell Hatton, and Jordan Spieth. Well, Spieth's clearly the most unique of these 5. I imagine a lot of people will go Victor. I imagine Victor will be pretty popular in a tiers contest for tier 2. And like I mentioned, I've got my concerns. So I think I can avoid Victor. I think Hatton will be too popular. Maybe not in a tiers contest, actually. I like Spieth. It's really hard for me to get away from Xander. And I don't think he'll be too popular in a tiers contest. So give me Xander in tier 2. I also like Spieth quite a bit, especially if you're worried about ownership. Go Spieth, but I'll go Xander. So I'll start this tiers team going Scheffler, Schauffele. Tier 3, Ricky, Tommy Fleetwood, Colin Morikawa, Jason Day, and Tony Finau. Ricky's going to be extremely popular, but probably a very smart play. Fleetwood's probably going to be pretty popular. In a tiers contest, I'd be a little bit worried about Morikawa because the putter can be so bad. This is tough. I don't want any part of Jason Day, so that's an easy write-off for me in tier 3. Finau, he's probably in the worst of form of these guys, but this is tough. Give me Ricky. I'll try to find some uniqueness elsewhere. I just have a lot of confidence that Ricky is going to play well, even if he is. I'm hoping Ricky will be a little bit more unique in tiers. He probably won't be, but that's going to be the hope as I build this tiers lineup. So give me Ricky in tier 3. Fleetwood should be fine too. but I like the upside of Ricky more than I like the upside of Fleetwood. Tier 4, Homa, Fitzpatrick, Wyndham Clark, Hideki, Brian Harmon, Cameron Young, and Sungjae. Pretty easy for me in this one. I'm going to go Brian Harmon. I don't mind Wyndham Clark, but I imagine he's going to be pretty popular, and that's why I'll go Brian Harmon in a tiers contest to gain that uniqueness. And I'm pretty high on Brian Harmon this week. So give me Harmon in Tier 4. Tier 5, Sam Burns, Russell Henley, Tom Kim, Sepp Straka, Keegan, Corey Connors, and Tagala. I'm going to write off Keegan and Tagala immediately. I like Sam Burns, but I might have to write him off in a tiers contest as well. I'm mainly looking at these three because I think Connors is going to be too popular for a tiers contest. If you don't think Connors is too popular in a tiers contest, you really should consider Corey Connors highly. But I'm debating between these three that are roughly around the same projected ownerships, at least for Classic. I'll go Russell Henley for the form, but Tom Kim is a very, very close second. It might be 1A and 1B, but give me Russell Henley in Tier 5. And then finally, Tier 6, we have Keith Mitchell, Aaron Rai, Taylor Moore, Harris English, Eric Cole, Adam Hadwin, and Thomas Detry. Yep, made it in time, just in time for tiers, Gabe. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. I mentioned how you seem like you're going to be focused on tiers for the next couple of weeks, so I'm going to try to expand the tiers content a little bit. I've reached Tier 6. If you didn't see all the tiers, I can recover them, or whatever that word is that I can't think of right now quickly. But in Tier 6, Aaron Ryan's going to rate out the best, but I worry about his ownership in a tiers contest. I've just got a gut feeling on Harris English. I like English. Dietrich's the home run play. I can see Dietrich really doing a lot of work, especially if that putter stays as hot as it's been on Fast Bermuda. He's got a lot of other things, really bad. But if he has, a really hot putting week, I could perhaps see Dietrich. But give me Harris English. It's more of a gut feeling. And I think Aaron Rai is going to be too popular for Tier 6. Revisit. Good evening, King. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Recap, revisit. Yeah, absolutely. That's the word that I was looking for. And clearly the English language is my specialty as a math guy. But very quickly, this tiers team that I just built will go Scheffler, we'll go Xander in Tier 2. Tier 3 will go Ricky, although there's a couple options in there. Tier 4, I'm going to go with Brian Harmon. If you're not worried about ownership, go with Wyndham Clark, but I really like Harmon this week. Tier 5, I went with Russell Henley. Henley and Kim are 1A and 1B for me. I do like Sepp Straka as well, and I just worry that Connors is too popular, so I'll go Henley. And then Tier 6, I'm going with Harris English on a gut feeling. Sorry, it's just off your screen. Harris English, thinking that Aaron Rai is going to be too popular. So there's the tiers lineup that I have built for the DFS Tactics Calls show. Let's move to classic lineups and see how we can't maneuver around the chalk here that is very prevalent, especially in these premier field events, these smaller field events. If we're going to build these chalky lineups that our fellow contestants seem to be building, I'm going to start with Jon Rahm. It could very well be Scotty Scheffler, but I'm going to try to save them some money. And Jon Rahm is the projected most owned player at the moment per Fantasy National. which feel free to jump in chat. Gabe, I know you have other sources that you use for ownership, so if you see something terribly egregious, by all means jump in chat and provide what you're seeing, because I just go by Fantasy National. John Rahm here, and we saw that there's a couple of players in the 10Ks that are garnering some attention. Alex Smalley, 10.5. Lee Hodges, 10.5. Putnam at 10.1. I'll go with Andrew Putnam. I don't get it, but John Rahm is the highest everywhere I look. I think what's happening there, and again, this is just speculation. I think what's happening there is that a lot of players, a lot of contestants, probably see Rahm and Scheffler as equal or close to it, and you're getting 1,000 in savings off of Scheffler. I mean, Scheffler's price is pretty darn prohibitive. I do have a couple of lower sixes that you could probably fit us into with a Scheffler, but I imagine that's probably, if I had to guess, that's what's going on there, is that contestants see Rahm and Scheffler as equal, and you're getting 1,000 in savings off of Rahm. And then I mentioned this as we were going through the price board. This is where you and I will be different, Gabe, this week. Andrew Putnam is garnering some attention. I'm not particularly there, but I've seen you and a few others advocate for Andrew Putnam. So it seems like he's been a pretty popular mid to lower 6K play. So if that's the boundaries that this chalky lineup is working with, I imagine most of our fellow contestants, Ricky's going to be a difficult ask. So I'm going to go with Colin Morikawa here at 9,000 as about the same ownership as Ricky. And then moving further on down, Wyndham Clark might be a bit too much for this. We can try. No, we can make this work. So Wyndham Clark in the 8s is about the only one, other than maybe Sam Burns, garnering some serious attention in the 8s. I agree. Been hearing his name all over the place. Wouldn't mind a fade. I'm just not there with Putnam. I'm assuming that's who you're talking about. I'm just not there. I understand the narrative behind it. Very good short game putter. Off the tee shouldn't matter here, or probably isn't going to matter too much. Yeah, I'm just not there. I think there's others in the 6s I've been going to. And then 2 7,500 plays. You can split this however you want. If you think our fellow contestants are trying to get a little bit greedy, going, say, Russell Henley, which would leave 72. Poston would be 100 more. Griot getting a lot of love, which I don't particularly like because I'm really high on Griot. 15% seems like a lot, and it is, but you understand this is a 70 man tournament, so 15% is actually not terribly high, but that's still going to be way too chalky to do anything with in terms of really rising the leaderboard in your big GPPs. We're going to have to try to find some uniqueness elsewhere, but I imagine that could be a stars and scrubs-ish kind of look going into the 6s for Andrew Putnam. And of course, this could be a couple other players, like I mentioned, Smalley. Who's the third one that was getting some attention? Lee Hodges. That could be other places as well. Like if we put Hodges, which is 100 more, it's still at 15.2. So there you go. There's a look at what might be considered a chalky stars and scrubs. And of course, if fellow contestants are willing to go 2 10Ks, or 2 6Ks, then this might become Ricky. If we're going to try to emulate a balanced looking lineup, we'll start that with Ricky, and we'll go with Tommy Fleetwood in the interest of using different players. This obviously could easily be Morikawa. Fleetwood could be, Ricky could be Tyrrell Hatton. Just trying to use some different names here for your all's benefit. But we'll start this with Ricky and Tommy. Griot would be the bottom of this balanced team, would be my guess. But just to use different names, I'll go with Poston or Zepost, as I was trying to type. So Fowler, Fleetwood, and then Poston. We have 8,000 per player. Again, trying to stick with this balanced theme. Don't want to go Morikawa. That would lend itself to be more of a stars and scrubs. So we'll go Burns. Yeah, this looks about right. I know we used him in the last lineup, but it is what it is. We'll go Henley and Tom Kim. That's still leaving 400 on the table. You could bring Poston all the way up to Corey Connors with this kind of shell. Look at perhaps a balanced look here. Ricky or Tyrrell Hatton, maybe Cantlay, but more so probably these two. These two. Fleetwood and Morikawa as the second. And then coming on down, Burns, maybe Wyndham Clark. And then moving into your sevens of Henley and Tom Kim and Connors. Ben On, who we didn't use in any of these lineups. He's been getting a lot of love. Glover's getting a lot of attention as well. So substitute in and out how you see it fit. But just trying to give you a shell of what a chalky balanced lineup might look like. So if we're going to maneuver around all that and try to still build an optimal lineup, this is why when I went through the price board in the 10s and the 9s, that's why I was so high on Xander, why I'm so high on Spieth. I'm trying to find as much uniqueness as I can in the upper part of the price board, knowing that, at least me personally, I am going to use the chalk in Henley and in Tom Kim. So I got to find uniqueness wherever I can, and I'm just generally high on both of these players as it is anyway, especially Xander being second in my model. But I also like Jordan Spieth this week. I know the recent results haven't been great, but he has played Southwind really darn well over the years, especially when it was a WGC. Same number of players, generally speaking, same quality of field. So I'm going to start this team with Xander and Spieth. I'm going to try to make it a balanced-ish look. It's going to be a tad bit more stars and scrubs because I'm going to use Scheffler in my stars and scrubs lineup that I've been mostly building, or the types of lineups I've been building. So I'll go Xander and Spieth, and I'm comfortable with that because me personally, I don't like a whole lot in the 8s. I mentioned I'm just down on Homa. Don't want Day. I don't have a good feeling on Fitzpatrick. Wyndham Clark would be fine, but he's going to be so darn chalky. If I'm in the 8s, it's Brian Harman. I also am probably going to have some Tony Finau if indeed he is truly at 7.5%. I can't fathom him being at 7.5%, but if he is, I'm sure I'll have some Finau. But for this lineup, I'm going to try to squeeze in a Brian Harman in the lower 8s. I still don't have to even come down to the 6s. We've still got 7,500 basically per player. Not crazy about Siwoo Kim, but he's pretty unique. Cam Davis could be interesting. You see Tony closer to 12. Yeah, see that's one of the things I can't fathom Finau being at 7.5. So that's also a benefit of being a subscriber to Gabe. Again, I make it no secret. I just pull my ownerships from Fantasy National and the Fantasy National members. While Gabe is a Fantasy National member and has that too, he also has other sources of ownership as well. So that's a big benefit to subscribing to Gabe, his articles and all that. I'm going to go with Brian Harman here to round out this lineup. I'll throw in Harris English at the bottom at 7. At 7 even. Given a 77, this is Tom Kim and Corey Connors. These are two of the chalkier plays in the area. That's probably going to reach 11%. Yeah, a little bit too chalky, but you can maneuver around that fairly easily. Sepp Straka could be interesting. I don't mind a Sepp Straka. I do like Tom Kim quite a bit. So instead, I'll come off of Corey Connors, and I'll go Cam Davis. Interesting. There's your sub 11% now. Let's see. Others in here. Again, these are not the types of lineups I've been building because there's not a lot in the 8s and the low 7s that I like. I'm more so in the upper 7s, which tells you the kind of lineups I've been building. But there's a look. I'll keep Cameron Davis in there. There's a look at a potentially unique looking balanced build that's going to gain a lot of leverage on your fellow contestants by skipping Scheffler, skipping Rahm, going to Xander, who I'm still really high on. Spieth's a bit more speculative, absolutely, but he's very unique compared to the others in the 9Ks, and he has played Southwind exceptionally. I'm very, very high on Brian Harman this week. Tom Kim I'm very high on. Cam Davis, normally I target on Bent, but he played well at the Wyndham last week, which is Bermuda. Should be okay. Harris English, I think, is getting slept on. He's rounding into form. But the lineups that I've been building have been more stars and scrubs, trying to really squeeze out as much value as I can up top, because I'm not afraid to come into the 6s, and particularly the low 6s, especially for the uniqueness. I know these players are going to play all 4 days. I don't have to worry about a cut. It takes one hot round for a player to accrue a lot of value, and that's why I've been targeting mainly putters in this bottom half. Putters who can also who are also pretty decent with the irons. At 6K, Sam Ryder, top 25 in irons. Yeah, there's a lot of deep red here. Par 4s, pretty bad. Greens, if he misses the fairway, pretty bad. He's been putting very, very well on Fast Bermuda, and he gives himself enough opportunities. Again, I wouldn't use Sam Ryder in a whole lot of lineups. This is your one-off in a Scotty Scheffler lineup, or if you're really, really needing to squeeze in some more price, I really don't mind Sam Ryder. So Scotty, Sam Ryder, I think even with going all the way down to Sam Ryder, I think going another 10K is going to be asking a bit too much. Try Patrick Cantlay. I don't know if it'll work. Yeah, that's pretty tough. Yeah, that's why I see Scheffler, and this just illustrates the point, Gabe, that you were mentioning earlier, and how Rahm is more owned than Scheffler. Unless you're comfortable using 2 6s, which me personally I am, but a lot of people aren't, Scheffler's price is pretty darn prohibitive. Pretty darn prohibitive. Let's see. If you're not comfortable going double 6s, you can go Scheffler. Cantlay's probably going to be a bit too much. This would be Spieth again. I really try not to use the same players, but kind of is what it is. He's about the only unique 9K option. We'll have to skip the 8s. Even so, we're still using a Henley or a Tom Kim, and then coming down into the low 7s again. Cam Davis, Grillo, which I really, really like Grillo this week, but I hate the ownership. Gosh, I really don't like seeing Grillo at 13%. But he's about the only one that I'm extremely confident in the low 7s. I don't mind Harris English. I have to figure Aaron Rai is going to be more popular than 10% as well. That's also part of the thought process on my end. I have to think Aaron Rai is going to be a little bit more than 10%. If he's not, then Aaron Rai would be the play. And then 76% 77, 76. You know, if you're using gosh dang it, if you're using Sam Ryder thinking putting, you can look at Denny McCarthy. I'm not in love with it, but also getting some uniqueness. That's one way to build it, especially if you're not comfortable using double sixes. But the way I've been doing this, generally speaking, Sam Ryder is absolutely a part of it, but I've been going places like Adam Schenk and Mark Hubbard. And granted, Mark Hubbard always rates out well for me just because he's an iron-based player. I don't hate Brendan Todd. I'm going to have some Alex Smalley. Eric Cole's getting some attention as well, but I'll do Schenk and Hubbard. And this should free up quite a bit more salary and salary relief for us. We can go Scheffler. Now we can try to fit that Patrick Cantlay in there. And we're still in that 7,500 range. You know, I think this is going to be a bit too much. Way too much. Let's see. With a 4% Mark Hubbard, you can probably afford to take a pretty chalky like Henley or Tom Kim, who, as I mentioned when we talked earlier, I am starting to come around more on Tom Kim, Gabe, the more I looked at it. And then, again, that 7,300 is Cam Davis, Milan Agrio. Justin Rose rated out extremely well for me. I'm not there. I'm very gun shy on Justin Rose this week. But if you want to trust the irons, proximity, Justin Rose would be one. There's a sub 10% or sub 11% lineup, leaving 100 on the table. You are using double sixes, just highlighting the difficulty of using Scotty Scheffler and a very prohibitive 12-1 in price. That's what I have for you all. I'll stick around for a couple minutes if there are any questions. Also want to hear your predictions. Who's your winner for the St. Jude this week? Who's your one and dones? Who do you think plays themselves into the top 50? Who plays themselves out of the top 50? Did you consider the no-cut filter on? Think about it. Not that we have. So I thought about it, definitely. But my issue with it, particularly for this week, and it'll be an issue at the beginning of next year, is that the last no-cut event happened in the calendar year 2021. And that's a long time in golf. I absolutely considered no-cut as a filter, especially for birdies gained, I think it was. I ended up going with the par 70 because I wanted to see who could go low without par 5s to take advantage of. And I know not every par 70 is the same. You have some some courses with 3 par 5s and 5 par 3s as a par 70. But generally speaking, that's why I went with the par 70 filter on birdies gained, to see who can get birdies on these par 3s and the par 4s, since you only have 2 par 5s at TPC Southwind. But yes, I absolutely thought about the no-cut filter. Just after seeing, I'll change the view here, after seeing how far back exactly it goes, because this is starting in 1/122, and there weren't any no-cut. None. I don't feel comfortable going that far back. For those interested, I'll go all the way back to January 1st of 2021. For those interested, your top performers in no-cut events, and you see there's very few rounds, only 24. But for those interested, your top performers in no-cut events basically in the calendar year 2021: Rory, Patrick Cantlay, Jon Rahm, Victor, Sungjae, Matt Fitzpatrick. It's only one tournament. Sam Ryder played well in it. It was only one tournament. I've been building mainly stars and scrubs. It's going to be really hard for me to ignore Scotty Scheffler. I'm sure I'll use a little bit of John Rahm. Like I said, I'm cautious on Victor. And then moving on down, as much as I don't like it, I'm using the Russell Henley chalk, the Tom Kim chalk in the upper sevens because I don't see a lot down there that I'm comfortable using. I'm not there with Sung Jae. I'm not there with Sahith Theegala. These players that would be unique, I'm just not there. That looks like it is going to do it for the DFS Tactics show. I want to thank P, Steven, King, and Gabe for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Always enjoy the interaction. Reminder that if you have success, whether you use a little of my material or a lot, please let me know either social media or in the comments of the video. I want to be able to shout out members of the community who have success. Week over week, we've had quite a bit of it. In the past 3 or 4 weeks or so, I've hit an outright. Gabe had a very big week last week in DFS, winning a tiers contest, also placing top 30, I believe it was, in one of the big GPPs. So we're going to try to continue the success that the community has had this week. Thanks to you four for jumping in chat. And thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. It's always appreciated. Love being able to take an in-depth look at sports statistics, trying to win a little bit of money in the process, and hopefully provide you all with some analysis to help you win that money. For all the wagers that you have made this week for the FedEx St. Jude Classic, for all the DFS contests you've entered this week for the FedEx St. Jude Classic, and for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.